Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Property and Investor podcast where I speak to some of the most interesting, inspiring, and resilient people in property. I, of course, am your host, Paul Lanfear, and you will have noticed that these podcasts are a slightly different. They're a little mini series of podcasts with people who I call the Inner Circle All-Stars, and I have one for you today. These are people who I've had the absolute privilege of working with over the last year or so, and they're here to talk a little bit more about it. And it was a genuine delight. I introduce Sean Knott. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Paul?
I am never better. It's great to see you, mate.
Fantastic. You too.
So let's launch straight into it then. So obviously we've had a great pleasure working together during the course of the year, and I just want to really have a bit of a chat about that. So you've been in the inner circle for a year. Tell us a little bit, give us a bit of an introduction to you then, because you've got a really interesting background, and I'm pretty sure most people don't know how interesting your background is. So tell us a little bit about your background just to get us started.
Well, in terms of property, I'm sort of relatively new to it, in all honesty. I've only been looking into property for probably the last couple of years. My background is I'm a commercial photographer by trade, so shoot mainly lifestyle type stuff, advertising for some sort of nationwide clients and that. So that's really my background, more of the creative industry. And I've been interested in property for some time, and took the plunge probably around COVID time when sort of my day job, the industry wasn't looking too great over the COVID period, as with a lot of industries. So I really got into photography, really got into property around that time. Yeah, so that's how I've come into it. Cool. And obviously I met you through property originally.
Mm-hmm. And you obviously, you've got your interest in property, but as alluded to, I mean, you've also got a very successful career as well, which and one of the great things about you, Sean, is that you absolutely love it as well. Like this,
Yeah,
you're not like what you like. Often we bump into people who are getting into property because they're looking to exit something they don't like. I remember when we first met, one of the first things you said to me is, "I absolutely love what I do."
Yeah.
So tell people, just give us like the overview of that. Like, what do you love about what you do?
Well, on a scale of things, I take pictures for a living. So how bad could it get? But also I photograph a lot on location, so I'm always in different locations internationally. So and I get an absolute buzz out of my job, So you're absolutely right. I love it. I can't think of a better job in the world when things are amazingly going so well. It wasn't probably the same through COVID, but it's back up and running. And yeah, touch wood, it looks like we're back on track in terms of workload. But yeah, it's just a pleasure. I work with loads of fantastic people and in really beautiful locations, and there's just an energy that I get out of it that I haven't come across anything where I get quite as much as a buzz. Mm-hmm. Property gives me a little bit of that buzz as well, and that's why I've sort of got into it. Mm-hmm. But I'm going slowly because it's sort of slightly secondary to my day job, and just going slowly rather than throwing myself into it too much. And like you said, I mean, from what I've learned, some people burn the ships and they sort of tend to throw everything at it. And I'm not so sure well, from my point of view, I don't think that's always the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. And look, if it's working, if it ain't broke, let's not try and fix it. And it's definitely not broke with you. There's one point I just want to hover on briefly before we move on. I mean, you live in you live in what's described often as God's own county of Yorkshire. So clearly you've come to your senses and moved to one of the finest parts of the world. But
your wife keeps telling me, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. And your wife is always right, as everybody knows. But you're not a Yorkshire lad, are you? So tell us a little bit about that. And I mean, you've even done military service, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm obviously for people who know the accent, I'm from South Africa originally, and I went to school, and instead of going to university, because I didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do with my life, and at the time there was national service in South Africa. So I went and did national service for 2 years, After that, I worked in sales for 3 years, and my best mate and myself decided, and he lives in Sydney now, we decided we were going to go traveling for a year. And that was in 1992. And then I left South Africa, discovered that the world was a very big place with lots of interesting things going on. And yeah, just traveled aimlessly for a long time, not really knowing where I was going with it. And then I discovered photography, you know, so I kind of met my wife, who's from Yorkshire, hence us living up in Yorkshire. But I'd lived in London for a while before. But we decided we didn't want to do the city thing. We'd been traveling around, lived in Sydney and New York, and we just wanted somewhere a little bit more subdued. And yeah, she brought me to Yorkshire.
Very good. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to hear it. Okay, so as to Inner Circle then, so where were you when you joined the program?
Well, I've got one property. I've got an HMO in Leeds. What I wanted to do with the HMOs that I was doing is I wanted it to be obviously for young professionals, but I wanted to bring some of my background and some of my connections into it, where I could bring some design elements and something a little bit different from the norm. So that's kind of where I was in property. I had one property on the go, and I was looking at another one, which was obviously during this last year, 2022, which was been a little bit of a tricky year, as I'm sure everybody will appreciate in property. So, but at the same time, fortunately for me, my work picked up again after the sort of drought during the COVID years. So I've been flat out with work throughout this year. So I guess I was just looking to gain more knowledge, as I always am. And just meet up with some people, which I got a little flavor of at your property breakfast. I'd met some really interesting people, and I just thought the Inner Circle was a way of sort of deep diving into it a little bit more, and learning more from people that have probably more years experience than I do, you know, like yourself and everybody else that was in the group. Did that answer your question there? Sorry.
Yeah, it does, definitely. I would say, you know, to offer you the compliment as well, you know, you also brought some great experience with you. You know, I mean, not only you, both professionally as well. You are a great photographer, and I know that you've shot for people on the program, and we've all seen the product of your work. So, you know, that has been a huge benefit to all of us. And also, obviously, you've done your House of Multiple Occupation, which I have to say is one of the most stunning designs I have ever seen. I mean, it's everybody who's ever seen it has kind of slightly fallen off their chair in awe of it. So
that's really kind. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So sketch out for us like some of the problems and challenges that you were maybe experiencing at that time.
I think it was just where to go to next from having this one property that I created and touch wood is going incredibly well, is how to go about building the portfolio, if you like. I know a lot of people say the first one's always the hardest. To me, I kind of, and maybe it was a timing thing. Maybe it's because I didn't have time to do my day job, so I put all of my energy into the property. So it worked out perfectly in that element. But for me, it's how do I take it to the next step, you know, which I'm sure a lot of people experience from a financial point of view, and also just going through the process again. So yeah, I just wanted to, as I said previously, I wanted to gain knowledge off of people, and not just from a property point of view. I just wanted to be in a group of people that I could share with, you know, a bit more of a community type vibe, and not just the one-off meeting now and again, and just have people that I could call upon if I had any questions, you know, which the Inner Circle did amazingly for that, you know.
Oh, well, that's obviously a pleasure to hear. So I suppose that segues like naturally into the next question, which is like, how did we help? You know, what insights did you see? How are things now? What's that look like?
I think for me, it was more than what I was a little bit worried about going into it was I thought it was going to be very property led, and I thought I might have been out of my depth. But the beauty of it is it wasn't just about that. Of course, property is the common theme, but it was so much more than that because, in fact, it was heaps more than that because people brought a lot of their personal life stories into it, which I think was really beneficial to the group, probably more so than any of the property elements. So it was way bigger than a group of people talking property. It was good, and the get-togethers and just generally having people available to discuss whatever issues. If, like I say, if it was property or non-property, I had a lot of personal things going on over the last year, which I was comfortable enough to share with the group. So that sort of says a lot that you're able to do that with a group of people, you know, which aren't necessarily close friends or family.
And I mean, we I can say as well, Sean, that we got as a group as well, like we got an enormous amount as well, you know, from the stuff you were sharing, you know, because there's been some great news in your life, and you know, it was great for us all to be part of that as well and go on that journey with you. I mean, it was just extraordinary. So
yeah, and it was just brilliant to share with other people who really appreciated it, and you got a sense of people were interested and concerned and appreciate it. Whereas I don't think it's always the case in sort of networking groups.
My take on it is that we are, you know, we kind of, I really, for me, it works to take like a holistic approach, like try and look at the whole person and the whole thing that's going on, you know, because everything is so interrelated. I mean, we'll get onto this later on, but you know, some of the amazing stuff that you've done on your bike, you know, you know, it's really inspiring for everybody in the group, but you can also see how that stuff also propels people to do other stuff as well, because we are these kind of holistic creatures. But we'll perhaps come on to that in a minute.
Yeah, it energizes people. You get it not just purely from a business point of view, but from a, like you say, from a health and fitness. I think it only was beneficial without a doubt.
Definitely. And if you can kind of do one thing over here, it kind of gives you, I think, the confidence to try something new in a different discipline or a different area as well, which is, you know, is amazing. So
sorry to interrupt that there, Paul. It's funny because through the inner circle, obviously there's the property element, but we also discussed a lot of just general investment opportunities and possibilities. And through that, I've starting to take things in a different way, you know, just through that book that you put us in touch, that Andrew Craig book. I've sort of listened to those books, and because I've not been a big long-term investor, I've learned masses from that, and it's helping me change the way I'm going forward, you know. So, and that's through the inner circle as well.
Wow, that's great to hear. I mean, that is a great book. Andrew Craig's a good guy, and he's been on the podcast, and he's coming back on the podcast as well to talk about biotech, which is going to be fascinating. And I'm totally with you on that. Well, you know, I am. You know, I think, you know, widening our field of view and looking at investments in a more wider scope actually makes us better property investors. I am exponentially a better property investor now than I was, say, 5 years ago, because I've got a wider field of view. I manage risk better. So yeah, I would definitely, obviously, naturally advocate a wider field of view. I think it's a really useful thing to have.
Absolutely.
So tell us about the future. What does the future look like?
Well, my plan this year is obviously to concentrate on my photography business, because I had a fantastic year last year. So if it's half as good as last year, I'd be happy. You know, it was just a bit of a freak year, but I think that had to do a lot with coming out of COVID. So I'm going to concentrate on that, but I'm also desperate to get the second property on the way. And possibly what I've also maybe learned is I was always going HMO routes. I'd like to get another HMO on the go, but possibly then even look at some buy-to-lets, so it doesn't take me as long to get another one on the go. but that I'm still I'm toying with that at the moment. And yeah, I'm super focused on getting healthier this year.
Yeah.
I haven't quite got any crazy cycling trips planned yet, but we'll see. But I want to sort of keep really healthy this year coming up, definitely. Starting with dry January at least.
Well, I'm wishing the best of luck with that, Sean. I'm sure you'll be fine. Fantastic. So then I suppose as we move towards a conclusion, if somebody sort of sat on the fence about Inner Circle, they're a little bit intrigued, they're interested, and they're just on that, they're having that they're on that fence moment of, whether to do it or not. What would you say about that if someone's thinking about
yeah, I'd say completely jump off the fence, because it's really, as we've both mentioned, it's kind of not just about the property element. That's obviously a big part of it, but so many other elements. So if you're just in a place where you feel you're trying to push forward, or you need a community, a small community of people that you can kind of connect with and meet up for walks, and the one-to-ones were fantastic. You get to know certain members in the group really well. That was brilliant. You really get to know how special some of the people were that were in the group this year. Yeah, I'd say just do it. Straightforward, just do it.
That sounds nice and straightforward to me. Perfect. Well, look, thank you very much, Sean. The final question is always, how can people reach out to you? So do you want to point them towards a social media platform? How would you like to do that?
If you just, my name, Sean Knott, SEANKNOTT, you'll probably find more of the photography stuff. But yeah, you can check out my website. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, but mainly Instagram, and check out my website. Yeah, contact me. I'm happy to discuss property, or certainly happy to discuss photography. Always happy to discuss photography. That's my specialism. But yeah, always happy to have a chat.
And if you do go over to Sean's Instagram, which I highly recommend you do, you'll see that he takes photographs in some absolutely phenomenal locations. But I'll leave you to discover that for yourself.
Yeah, very lucky, and that's why I consider myself so fortunate and grateful.
Well, look, Sean, thank you so much. Well, firstly, for having this year together. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, and for coming on the podcast and having a bit of a chat about it.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It's been absolutely brilliant, and you're an absolute pleasure to have as a mentor. Always really easy to talk to, always supportive and willing to help out. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that's very, very kind of you. And yeah, thank you. It's much, much appreciated. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. To discuss anything that we've discussed in this podcast with Sean, property resilience, investing, come and join us at the next Property Investor Breakfast. The link will be in the show notes. Connect with me on social media. Again, links will be there. I'll put Sean's link in below as well. Keep well, speak soon, and thanks very much for listening to the podcast.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.